Well, good evening, everybody. Before I start the 74th episode of the Game Changers, I wanna talk a little bit about two celebrations that's happening today. So today is a day of celebration and awareness. First of all, huge congratulations for two of my students, Kaliwal and Shaukat. They won the Connecticut Arabic Poetry Competition, earning second and third place in their division. So well deserved, you guys. It's also Autism Awareness Day, a time to celebrate neurodiversity, advocate for understanding, and uplift the voices of those on the spectrum. My son, Chris, has Asperger, and through him, I've learned that autism isn't a limitation. It's a different way of seeing the world, full of brilliance, creativity, and uniqueness. Today and every day, let's embrace and support our autistic community. So, welcome everybody to the 74th episode of the Game Changers. I'm Carla, your host for this episode, featuring Kyle Lindemann. His extensive expertise will provide invaluable insights into our discussion, where we will explore thought provoking topics to ensure a one of a kind experience for our audience. A special thank you for the TSA team for their support in creating this platform for meaningful conversations with community leaders and innovators like you. Join me as I delve into the stories and insight of my guests, especially in the realm of fantasy football. The Game Changers foster a unique community, and I'm honored to share this journey with all of you tonight. Who is Kyle Linderman? Kyle Lindemann is a seasoned entrepreneur and media strategist, known for his ability to bridge technology and business growth. As the founder of Thrive Social Inc., he helps companies streamline operations, enhance productivity, and stay competitive in an ever evolving digital landscape. With years of experience crafting content and shaping social media strategy, Kyle understands the pulse of modern communication and marketing. Previously, he spent 3 years as a contributor and editor at Rotoballer, providing expert analysis on fantasy football strategy, NFL prospects, and sleepers. Though he is currently taking a break from fantasy content, his insights remain a trusted resource for fans and analysts alike. A U.S. Marine Corps veteran with degree in public communications and finance, Kyle combines discipline, practicality, and no-nonsense approach to business. Beyond his professional ventures, he's a dedicated father and a lifelong Cleveland Brown fan, holding onto hope season after season. Kyle, welcome to the Game Changers. How are you tonight?
Howdy. Whew, I'm good. I've been busy. I'm just started working back on my mock draft today because been promoting the book launch and everything. And I'm like, man, we're like 3.5 weeks, like 3 weeks from the draft. I gotta, I've been following it this whole time, but I'm just like, you know what? We're 3 weeks left now. We're kind of on the home stretch.
Yeah, that's crazy. I know that, a lot of people take like a time off a little bit, but yeah, we're coming up to drafting and it's going again. Thank you so much for being on the show tonight, Kyle. So we're gonna talk a lot about, your fantasy football story, personal, and the book, The AI Essentials for Beginners. But let's start with your business and internship. What inspired you to start Thrive Social Inc?
Well, it's kind of interesting because I actually worked as a mortgage loan officer for like a decade. So I pretty much worked in finance, but it was a crazy way to make a living because like when interest rates were low, we would be so busy and it was a lucrative industry to be in. And then when the interest rates would go up, it was like everybody there would just be like, trying to scrape by from month to month. And it was just a crazy way to make a living, like just having your income fluctuate so much. And I'm like, you know what? I really kind of want to do my own thing. And I was thinking about, okay, what, I think everyone's going to ask themselves like two questions. Like one is, do I have an unfair advantage in any particular niche? Like basically the sense of, okay, what am I really good at? And then you have to ask yourself the question, like, what do I really like to do? And I think everyone in life should do one of two things. You should do
Yeah.
what you're really, really good at, or you should do what you love. And I think if everyone did that, I think the world would be a better place. But long story short, I was just thinking, I'm like, you know what? I really want to do my own thing. What's something I know? And I kept coming back to like social media and
Yeah.
media creation and AI and everything. You know, working in the fantasy space, I feel like I worked so hard, editing articles every week, trying to come up with content. I'm scheduling tweets, I'm making YouTube videos, I'm making like player highlight videos. And so it just kind of got me thinking. I'm like, you know what? I've got business experience. So how do I take all this, social media stuff, and how do I help people who are self-employed? Because a lot of people who are self-employed are just so busy, they can't wear all the hats. They kind of need someone to, help them with their business. So that's kind of how I got started.
I agree. That's amazing. That's an amazing point of view of starting something. So because we were talking about AI, I want to ask about your AR journey and influences in that. So I went and I bought the book, and I'm
Oh, thank
really
you.
excited excited to read through this, because as a teacher as well, it's really important to get into technology and everything, and up to date with the kids and teenagers, especially that I'm a high school teacher. But when did you first
Right.
become interested in AI, and was there a mentor or colleague who influenced your AI journey?
Um, it probably started with Chat GPT like a couple of years ago because, as someone who writes a lot and I try to read a lot, right? So how I
Yes.
first got started with Chat GPT was like I would read probably 2 hours worth of like columns on Monday morning, early 6, 7 in the morning when the week, basically all the Sunday games are over, and I'm trying to get insight from each team's like beat reporter. I want to read like Monday Morning Quarterback with like Albert Breer, Peter King. And it got to the point that I was like, it was, it's so much to keep up with. So then what I basically did was I was having Chat GPT like summarize articles for me and go in and like, you kind of had to teach it a little bit, but like eventually I kind of taught it to like, it would know what to look for, and like it would give
Yeah.
me kind of, if I, instead of reading because the Monday Morning Quarterback is a great column, and but sometimes it takes you 25 minutes to read the whole thing, and I can't have time for that. So I would get, these AI tools to give me the article in like 5 minutes. And that was kind of why I started becoming fascinated with it, because especially in the fantasy space, you're typically paid by, most creators are kind of paid by the, amount of content they could pump out. So my thinking
Yeah.
was, I don't want to use AI to replace me. I want to use AI to enhance me. So I don't want
That's
to, I think there's definitely an ethical, discussion with AI, which I actually talk about this in the last chapter of the book. I think there's an ethical and there's a non-ethical way to do it. I think if you're trying to use AI to take shortcuts and, you know, skip to the front of the line, I don't think that's the way to do it. But if you can use it to become more efficient in your job, all of a sudden, okay, if I can use AI tools to multiply myself by 3 and I'm working at like a much faster output, that's kind of the way that I saw it. And
that's
that's kind of
nice.
excited about it.
So, how did your military background influence your approach to learning new technology?
I feel like my military background just kind of gave me the, you know, in the Marine Corps, we always have a saying like adapt and overcome. And, I would say all the branches are good, all the branches are hard, but I think mentally and physically, the Marine Corps is probably the toughest branch on you.
Yeah.
And we were always getting like hand me downs from the Army or hand me downs from the Air Force. Like in the Marine Corps, you never get like brand spanking new equipment. It's just not how it works. And I think there's a reason to that, is because I think they want to teach you to make the most use of limited resources. And
Yeah.
so even though I've been out of the service for a little while, I think that's like is still ingrained in my head. Like that's my mentality of, hey, like no matter what life throws at me, I've got to be able to adapt and overcome this. And kind of just dove head first into AI. It was kind of overwhelming at first and a little intimidating. And I tried to take everything that I've kind of learned about it, maybe the last 3 years, and kind of put it into a book,
Nice.
like what are the most important takeaways? Because I think what kind of inspired me also to write the book was I think a lot of people are super interested in AI, right? But
Yes.
you might not want to go, sit in a 6-hour seminar on a Saturday. So I tried to take it like, okay, what is AI? How does it apply to you? How can you use it in your life to make your life better? And that was kind of what I tried to do.
Nice. So if someone is skeptical about AI, what would you say to them?
I think it just depends on your goals and kind of like what you're looking for, I think a lot of people, not a one size fits all, but I think a lot of the people that I've kind of had this conversation with are probably people, older than 50 that, they're still working, they're still like, at the peak of their career, but they don't necessarily want to retire for another 15 years because they love working. But at the
Yeah.
same time, they see all this AI coming and they're like, okay, like I want to get out ahead of this. I don't want AI to replace my job. I don't want to get lapped by all these younger people at my office, even though I know more about the job than they do. People could use AI, in that field. So I think it's different for everyone. And and kind of what I say to people who've read the book is take as much or as little bit away from it as you want. You may not want Alexa home assistant. You may not want to use ChatGPT. You may not need AI to edit videos, but like, okay, maybe you might need AI for this one thing. It's kind of up to you.
Yeah, that's really cool. So what's one industry that AI will, make a revolution for it, but people aren't talking about it yet?
Well, I think the biggest, and I kind of talk into the kind of the ethical dilemma of this, is music. Because I don't know if you remember that song. It was a little over 2 years ago. There was a song by Drake and The Weeknd called Heart on My Sleeve that came out and just exploded. And it was a phenomenal sounding song. And then all of a sudden we're like, oh crap, like Drake and The Weeknd did not record this. It was basically an anonymous user on the internet who used these AI tools to like take Drake's kind of lyrics and like The Weeknd's kind of like legendary kind of singing style voice, and like he replicated them and made this like amazing song. And there's nothing like kind of official, but like attorneys and kind of other people are kind of scrambling, to try to get some legislation passed or something that could kind of protect artists, right? Because I think there's a way to use AI in music, but I don't, what if someone, I think the worry was like, what if someone took AI and made a recording of you as you're an artist, but like it had lyrics that you were completely against, right? That was like completely against
Right.
everything you've stood for. All of a sudden
Yeah.
it's like, oh, you know what I mean? I actually think music, and we're already kind of seeing it, but I think the hope is that, we won't lose kind of the best of what makes music, if you will.
I agree. I mean, I learned today, I talked to my niece, one of my nieces back in Lebanon, and I learned that there's a school right now in Lebanon that don't use teachers anymore and they use robots. So the robot will talk to the
Wow.
kids, and the kids will have tablets and they will answer yes or no on their tablets. And the teacher will be walking around and just see if they're answering correct. It's fine. If they're not, she pull out a video. She doesn't even talk to them. She pull out the video and show them how they're gonna do the problem, or what didn't they understand, and the video will teach them that.
Wow.
And it
Wow.
blew my mind. Like,
Yeah.
are you kidding me? Like in Lebanon, it's starting to have robots instead of human being to connect with the kids. What do you think about
Wow.
this?
Um, I mean, it could be useful in some instances, but I think like, my teachers were kind of always my mentors growing up, like whether I agreed with them or not, whether I liked them or not, or you know, um, hard to say. I feel like everything changes from like generation to generation, but I know for me, I definitely learn more in person.
I agree, and people need people interaction. So
Okay.
I'm not. It blew my mind, honestly, to know that in my country there's something like that. So Sniper Mel was saying that she wants this book. What can you tell us, Kyle, about this book and how people can buy it? We will tell them more at the end of the episode.
Yeah, I
But
so I
can you share?
currently yeah, I'll share the link now. Sorry, I think my internet might cut out for a second. I'm trying to mix my browsers, but yeah, I can post the link
Yes.
to the book right now in the chat. Um, I currently have the paperback version is only $9.99. If you have
Yes.
Kindle Unlimited, it's currently you should be able to get it
Free.
currently free. If you want the
True.
ebook version, it's only $2.99 right now. So, and I will
Yes.
post the link to that now.
So talking about AI
Um,
remind me a lot of Ronnie. I don't know if you know Ronnie Evans. He is a
oh, I
big
do know Ronnie. I do know
he's a
Ronnie.
big speaker about AI, and he does a lot of work for the game changers
Huge.
sometimes. It's amazing. It's amazing work. So he have a different perspective on AI as well, and I love his work, and I cannot wait to read your book as well and get to learn a little bit more
Yeah.
about you. That's amazing. So thank you for sharing that, and thank you for sharing the link.
Yeah, no, Ronnie
As
Ronnie is a good guy. Super
he is. I agree. I agree. So
he's wanted me to connect. So as soon as I connect, I should be able to post the link in here.
yeah, I I know sometimes that's why I don't click a lot on the studio. So I don't want to
No,
lose my stuff.
I should have been hardwired before I got on the call. That's my apologies.
No, you're fine. No worries. So let's talk a little bit um, let's go again, and talk about the biggest challenges in scaling your business. So what were your biggest challenges, and how do you define success as an entrepreneur, Kyle?
Um, sorry, I think my internet was loading there for a second, so my apologies. Made sure to close all my windows, so hopefully we should be smooth sailing the rest of the way.
Okay.
I think success is kind of a relative term. I kind of look at it like I think success is like being satisfied with what you've accomplished, but
Yeah.
still knowing that like at the end of the day you can still push yourself to do more and trying to find the happy medium between the both of those.
Yeah.
I think you know the best way to be a successful entrepreneur is just to have a helpful spirit. Try not to think of customers in terms of dollars and cents. You know, Joe Bryant, one of the founders of Football Guys,
Yeah.
he had a quote like 3 years ago that is stuck in my head forever, and he said, as a content creator, what problem are you solving, and who are you solving it for? And even though that is in the fantasy football realm, I feel like that's just such a wise principle that you can apply to like almost every area of life. And that's something I've thought about, as an entrepreneur, like how do I
Yeah.
help people? How do I take people from A to B and kind of be the bridge between? How do I help people get what they want? I'm a kind of big believer in, karma and paying it forward and just trying to do right by people, and it'll come back to you. And
Nice.
so I would say probably the best way to be successful as an entrepreneur is just to want to help people first.
That's
And then you can
amazing.
take that and turn it into a business.
Yeah. I agree. Agreed. How did you get into content creation?
You know what? It's so funny because I've always been like a random, you know, encyclopedia of sports stuff. Like I'm that guy that will like clean everyone out in sports trivia. Like the night of the Super Bowl, I kid you not, I was with like my girlfriend, her brother and sister, some of their friends,
Yeah.
and I said to him, I'm like, he's like, you know so much about football. And I was like, all right, let's do a quiz. I'm like, start with Super Bowl one, and we'll go from Super Bowl one to Super Bowl 59. I'll tell you both teams who played and who won. And I did it. I did it from memory. I got all
Wow.
59 Super Bowls. I got the score for a couple of, or for like a handful of them, but I've always just been like a hardcore football nut, and I've just always loved it. And maybe should have went to school for journalism, radio broadcasting. I don't really have too many regrets, but maybe that's something I should have done out of the gate, but I didn't. I kind of got into sales because I was chasing the money, and then
Yeah.
kind of got older and realized like, okay, I've made a few bucks in my day, but didn't necessarily feel that like sense of fulfillment in my career. You know what I mean? So that's kind of
Yes.
what led me on this journey, to kind of do my own thing now. And I would say I'm blanking out.
Yeah.
Help me. I lost. Oh yeah. So I'm just a big football nut, and I just know so much about it that Rotoballer, like 3.5 years ago, was looking for people to contribute to their site. And I had started just like tweeting stuff on my Twitter. I think I had like 100 followers at the time. Like nobody knew who I was. And somebody sent me something like, "Oh, Rotoballer is looking for writers. Can you message this Adam Koffler guy?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure." So I messaged him. I was like, "Hey, bro, are you here? Rotoballer is looking for, you know, content creators. Like I'm a huge NFL fan. Can I write something? Can I send you guys a few samples?" So I wrote like 3 sample articles and sent it to him. And then he sent it up the chain. And then they're like, "Oh yeah, we really like this. Like, when can you start?" And then I started doing all the grunge work in the beginning. Like, didn't really make a whole lot of money. But I was just taking whatever article I could. I would do like weekly waiver wires, and like these are like running back stashes you want on your fantasy roster, even though they were rostered on like 3% of teams. So it was kind of, I just took all the assignments that people didn't want and just kind of worked my way up to becoming an editor from there.
That's nice. That's really nice. I love that. You start from like the beginning and you get where you wanna get. That's amazing.
Yeah.
So how did your time at Rotoballer shape your understanding of sports media?
Um, it probably just gave me like more of a perspective on the business side and kind of everything that goes into it, right? With like, wanting to SEO optimize the article, and the importance of, getting articles out in X amount of time, right? Like, oh, so and so player was traded. Like,
Yeah,
you want to get an article out in the next 20 to 30 minutes. You don't want to be getting an article out like 6 hours from now. You know what I mean? So it's just
yeah,
very like bam, bam, like you've got to be on it, and the same thing with like, if you're writing a waiver wire article, right? Like you need that thing out at like 6 a.m. on a Tuesday morning. Like if you're releasing your waiver article like at 11 a.m. on Wednesday, it's like basically useless. Um, so there's so much that goes into it. There's the fantasy football business and the industry in general is just very competitive. Like there's so many smart people, and there's so many like really great content creators, and there's just not enough, websites to employ us all. You know what I mean? It's just the fantasy space is so competitive. Like there can only be one Field Yates. There can only be, you know, there's only so much room, and so that's kind of how we look at it.
that's really cool. So how do you handle criticism as a content creator?
That's hard because I like to think that like I put my whole heart and soul into everything.
Yeah.
And there was like two people who reviewed my book on Amazon, and they gave it a really, really good review. They had like nice things to say,
Well,
but they only gave it a 4-star out of 5. And I'm like, come on, man, you got to give me a 5. If you really like it, you got to give me a 5. Don't give me a 4. Um, no, it's hard. It's it's hard because like, I feel like I always put my whole heart and soul into everything I do, put my whole heart and soul, into that book, like every ounce of everything I had, So I think my work becomes me in a sense. It's a reflection of me. And I think sometimes you have to step back and realize that, sometimes we all communicate in different ways. Like, you know,
True.
um, someone may, it's kind of like teaching, right? Like you
Yeah.
may have you may have three teachers that all could teach the same thing, but there's that one teacher that you just feel like you connect with better or you learn from better, right? Like
Yeah.
me, like I am so much a visual learner, and I've embraced this as I've gotten older. Like I would
Yes.
get, like a man, I'd order something from IKEA and I'd get a manual, and like my wife at the time would be like cursing at me, like, "You're such an idiot. Like, how do you not understand this?" You know what I mean? And then, but I realized like that is not how I learn. But if you take that product from IKEA and you put it on YouTube and I watch someone do it, I can do it easily.
I'm
And
visual. Yeah.
so I think sometimes it comes down to like understanding how you learn, but also
True.
too, I not everyone's, always gonna be the biggest fan of my work. I think sometimes we just connect with, content creators differently, right? Like you might connect
Agree.
with a content creator more than another one because of some shared experience that you have, So,
Yeah.
it's hard, when someone kind of is, mean or nasty about your work, but I try to let it roll off. For the most part, like you're always going to have your trolls on Twitter and stuff, but for the most part,
True.
I haven't really experienced that. Like most people are not out to like dump on my work. I think when you're maybe a little too cocky or a little too confident or arrogant, I think that's when you start to get a little bit of the pushback from people. So I don't know. I've just always tried to be like a man of the people, I suppose.
That's really nice. That's really nice. And I do believe when your work is really like high content and really good, you're gonna see a lot of trolls. So you're there because of that. So that's why I think the criticism, the bad
Yeah.
criticism comes in.
Well, and
What's your
it's
advice? Yes, go ahead, please.
oh no, I was gonna say so, and this is interesting because it kind of applies to AI,
Yeah.
and so this is the first book that I've written, and unfortunately, I've seen a lot of other people like enter the publishing space, right? Like as an
Yes.
author, but coming to the conclusion that either A, that they used a ghostwriter, or two, they used AI to like basically write like 90% of the book. And I think
It shows though.
people are trying to get in because they're like, oh shoot, I can use AI and I can write this book and I can make all this money on Amazon. I tell you right now, not going to work. Like
No.
you could use AI to help with some of your book, but you can't use AI to basically write an entire book because like people are looking for that genuine like human to human connection. And there's as much as I love AI cannot replicate that. Like AI computer, they don't understand human emotions, right? Like AI can tell you like what stock to trade, right? And they know
Yeah.
probably better than most people, but AI like doesn't understand why you're crying during a movie. And that's just how it goes. So
I
I've
agree.
definitely noticed that like people are trying to get in because I'm on a couple of these sites where like authors like, we will kind of review each other's work and kind of like give each other reviews and stuff. And there's a couple of one I was reading this guy's book today and I was like, man, this is so hard to read. Like, and then I plugged it into Grammarly and Grammarly gave it like a 96% AI detection rating. So I'm like, dude, you
Oh
didn't even
my
write this.
God, that's insane. And you can feel it.
Yeah.
Like you can feel when you read a book, you can feel that it's AI used. It's not the
Yeah.
same like someone is writing from their heart, like you said.
Yeah.
That's
For
crazy.
sure.
Yeah. So, what's your advice for someone looking to break into media and content strategy?
I would just say, if you gotta love it. Like you gotta love football, you gotta love fantasy football, whatever you want to make content about, like you gotta love it. Like the fantasy
Yeah.
football industry is such a grind. It's awesome. Like don't get me wrong. Like I love it. I'm like, you know, it's a little tough because
It is.
My daughter is 3. She's going to be 4 in a couple weeks, and my son is
Happy
2.
early birthday!
Yeah, thanks. And so it's hard because, like, like when I was a kid, my dad was always there. Like my dad, I
Yes.
literally had like, and he's still alive. He's 60. I believe he is 6. My dad's 67. And my dad never missed anything when I was growing up. Like, he went to every play, every game. And
Nice.
the funny part was, like, I was pretty good at baseball and he was my manager in baseball, but football, I wasn't like good. I wasn't as good. And like, I was always getting in trouble. And I remember there was like one game I didn't play. Like, the coach benched me because I was like acting up in practice. And I was the only kid on the team who didn't play. It was like 7th or 8th grade football. And my dad was still there in the stands, like watching me. I remember I even took mud from the sideline. I was like wiping it on my jersey, like before I got on the bus, because this one cheerleader that I liked, I think her name was Amanda. I didn't want her to know I didn't play.
I
But
love that.
but the funny thing is, like, my dad was always there for me, and I'm thankful for that. And so it's hard because, like, I want to consume as much football as possible on the weekend, but like, I know I need to be a dad. So,
Yes.
I usually will watch games on one of the 2 days, so there's some weekends I can't watch every NFL game, but now with NFL Plus, it's like so nice. I can go back on Monday, I can go back on Tuesday, I can watch all the games, So I think my advice would be push it as far as you want, but don't push it to the point that you don't enjoy it. Like, there there's a part of me that, even though I love being in the football space,
Yes.
there's a part of me sometimes that just misses being a fan on Sunday and like
I agree.
going and watching the Browns, right?
Yeah.
And that's it. I didn't have to worry about any other team. Like, I'm not staying up till 12:30 because I need to catch every minute of Sunday night football. I'm not staying up super late because I have to watch Monday night football, Thursday night football. I've got to go back and
It's
I've got to
really
watch every
important.
game. Like, that's hard. But like, when you're working in the fantasy space, you have to
Yes, I agree.
you have to know all 32 teams in order to be a good fantasy analyst. And sometimes I envy these journalists and reporters. They only cover one team. All they got to worry about, if you write for the Buffalo Bills for the Athletic, yeah, you're working your ass off. But guess what? You only got to know about one team. You don't have to know about the 31 other teams. And in our industry, that is hard. It is hard to know the depth chart and just the ins and outs of all 32 teams. Like, it sounds easy. It's not.
Oh my God. It's yeah. Like Doug is saying, week 18 feels so odd some years because you can't watch football. It's crazy. It's crazy. Yeah, I know. Doug says like and he wants to know about every single team and everything, so he is up to date all the time
Hard.
with the stuff. It's so hard, and I cannot do what he does. Like I can't. I envy you guys, but I cannot do it. So, what's your favorite piece of content you've ever created, Kyle?
Man, that's a good question. I think probably I did. I mean, outside of my book, obviously, because that was the most time and effort. I mean, I put like months of research into it. It took like an entire month to write it, you
Wow.
know.
Yeah.
So, I mean, outside of that, I would say probably the final mock draft, because typically I would do a mock draft, like I would do my top 50 board like before the season, and then I would do my first like mock draft in like early October, and then I would pretty much do one like once a month. And then when you kind of get to the end, it was kind of cool to see, okay, here was my mock draft in like May, I think last year or no, 2 years ago, I did a 2024 mock draft in like May of 2023, like after the 2023 draft. And like, I want to say like 21 or 22 of the 32 picks like that I had initially, like all ended up going in the first round. And some of those were layups, right? Like your Brock Bowers and your Caleb Williams and your Marvin Harrison. Like we knew those guys were going to be first round picks when they were freshmen. But I would say that was probably my favorite, because it was like you go back and you kind of look and see how the mock draft progresses. And then it was like, okay, like I was pretty spot on that, like, because I think last year, I think the 2024 rookie class is just so special. Like just all the players we had.
Yeah.
It might end up being a little light at running back, but like you look at the quarterbacks and the receivers and obviously Bowers, and I just think, yeah, the 2024 draft class is special. I think we're going to look back like 10 years later and be like, man, like it had so many good players like Malik Neighbors and all those guys.
Cool. So, who do you think is the most underrated fantasy football player of all time?
Analyst or like in real life a
No,
player?
football player, fantasy football player. Underrated.
Underrated. I mean, I don't know so much now, but I mean, I felt like prime Tyler Lockett, man. Like every year he would always outperform his ADP every stinking year. This is going to go back a little ways, but another guy actually would be Emmitt Smith, because like Emmitt Smith was really good even in his like early 30s. And I remember being a kid, like I remember being in my dad. This is so funny. This will take everybody back. I'm dating myself here. But when I was a kid, my neighbor across the street ran a fantasy football league and my dad was in it and I got to be in it one year. It was touchdown only. And you would get like I think you would get points for like long touchdowns and stuff, but the touchdowns were worth like 6. And like when I was a kid, there was nothing better than reading the sports page on a Monday and like checking all the box scores of all the games. And especially when it was like, when I was a kid, I couldn't stay up for like Monday Night Football, right? So yeah. I would like check the box score on like Tuesday morning to see what happened on the game if I didn't look on SportsCenter. And I remember drafting Emmitt Smith, I remember like a couple years in a row getting like amazing value. Like all my dad's friends are like, "Oh, Emmitt Smith's washed. He's not any good." And I'm like, "He's Emmitt Smith. Who cares? He's running behind this offensive line. He's good." And I want to say I like cleaned up. Even I want to say if you go back and look, Jerry Rice at age 34 or 35, like coming off a torn ACL. I don't know if it was a 95 or the 96 season, something in there. Jerry Rice put up like the most outrageous season ever. And he was like 35 years old.
That's crazy.
I don't have the exact year, but like I remember getting him in my dad's fantasy league like a year later because people were like, Jerry Rice is done. And I'm like, I was like 14 years old. I'm like, what do you mean Jerry Rice is done? Jerry Rice is not done.
So at that age, you've seen differences and you've seen something different in people. And that's how you become good in fantasy football. That's amazing.
Yeah.
I love that.
I mean, maybe 2019 Lamar. Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
2019 Lamar Jackson. After his rookie year when he only played 7 games, like I remember getting him in an auction league for $1.
No.
And that was the year that he won MVP and like literally broke the league. And he was like, I think he was like 26 or 25 or 26 like fantasy points a game that year. It was insane.
1998 for Rice. He tore his ACL in 1997. So around that time we were talking about. Thank you, Doug. And Sniper Mal wants to ask you a question. Who's your top 5 favorite? And then someone wrote something and I lost it. So who's your top 5 favorite rookies this year?
Click on the comments. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
There we go.
Who's your top 5 favorite rookies this year for the draft class?
Well, I think Ashton Genty is going to be like immediate plug and play. I think it's going to come down to where he goes. Now, I'm kind of one of those guys I really wouldn't draft a running back in the top 10 in terms of positional value and like what you're paying him compared to his peers. I think when you're picking in the top 10, you got to think like, okay, what's a position that's hard to get, that I may not be able to get later. I think this running back class is deep, but at the same time, I think somebody's going to draft Genty in the top 10 because he's so good. So he's going to be the Dynasty 101. I'd probably put Cam Ward number 2 because he's a really, really athletic quarterback. Like, wouldn't shock me if he ran for like 350, 400 yards, had 5 or 6 rushing touchdowns. I think pretty much a given he's going to go to the Titans number 1 overall. Now they need to get him some weapons, but he's at least going to have a pretty good offensive line and like 2 capable running backs behind him. So he's probably
Yeah.
number 2. I'm I'm a big Luther Burden guy, wide receiver out of Missouri. I know he's kind of fallen on draft boards. He kind of had a little bit of a down year this year, but Missouri's offense was a mess. Their quarterback was not good. It was just a mess. And if you look at Luther Burden from like 2022, 2023, he was better. I think he's going to be instant plug and play in the NFL. I think he's going to be a good player. Man, I do like the tight ends. I think Tyler Warren, Penn State, from the tight end from Penn State, I kind of like him because he's a tight end that can play every down. Like, he can stretch the seam. I was looking at this. I think he measured in at 6'5", like 260. But like this guy has a pretty high like RAS score. Like, he's pretty athletic, but like he's a monster in the run game. So we kind of want that from our tight ends in fantasy because we don't want them to be subbed out, right? Because they can't block. At the same time, you don't want your tight ends in fantasy to be such good blockers that like they're just blocking, kind of like the Dallas Goedert syndrome. But I like Tyler Warren. This is such a deep running back class. I'd say probably Travion Henderson from Ohio State. He is just a home run hitter waiting to happen. Like, this guy just boom, you give him a hole, he's going 80 yards to the house. Like, you cannot give that guy any space. I think Travion Henderson from Ohio State is going to be really, really special. Like, he's so fast. So yeah, those are probably my 5. I mean, what I would say to people is try not to look at this year's rookie class kind of through the lens of last year. Last year, like I said, was just so special, and we're probably not going to see that again for like another decade. But I think there's going to be some capable players. I like Tet McMillan, the wide receiver from Arizona. I think my only concern, I just want to make sure this guy can separate. Like, he's a monster downfield. He's really, really good at the catch point. He ran kind of in the low 4.5s, which is fine for a guy his size. But I think if you look at the NFL and you look at like kind of how the meta has changed, like back in my day, you had like a big, strong X receiver on the outside. The smaller receivers really didn't do much. But if you look now, you got so many smaller guys like Jordan Addison, Devonta Smith, Tank Dell before he got hurt, so McMillan, but I just want to make sure he goes to a good situation.
Yeah. You made Mel happy, by the way. So she's happy with those predictions. Thank you for sharing that, Kyle. What's your prediction for the Cleveland Browns this year?
Well, they messed up with the Deshaun Watson thing. That's what's so frustrating, right? It's like, if you want to give up all these picks and, you want to go try to get a quarterback, okay, that's fine. But like, don't sell your soul for a freaking scumbag, and that's kind of it. It's unfortunate. It's unfortunate for the fans. And, I know there's a lot of people out there that probably don't like the Browns because of what they, everything that happened with Watson. But like, I'm just a fan. I didn't do it. I didn't make the trade. That's tough. But I do think the Super Bowl, even though I know it was tough for you, sorry. I think this year's Super Bowl brought some good because I think the last 4 or 5 years, it kind of broke our brains in the sense that I think all of us kind of thought that quarterback is all that matters. Oh, you got to have an elite quarterback. You got to have an elite quarterback. You got to have an elite quarterback. Well, guess what? There's 21 other guys on the field out there at the same time. The quarterback's important. And I'm not downplaying Jalen Hurts at all. I think Jalen Hurts is a very good, capable quarterback, but I probably wouldn't put him in the top 5. And I think most people would agree with that. But obviously we know Patrick Mahomes is special, but when you're under duress all game and you're just getting, you just got a jailbreak coming at you, it doesn't really matter how good you are, So I think the Super Bowl was good in that sense because I think we forgot that, like, you know what? You've got to have 21 other good players out there. on
Yeah,
offense and defense. Football is a team sport. Yeah, quarterback's important, but you want to make sure you build a good roster so that way when you got to drop the quarterback in, he's got a much better chance. So
agree.
I think for the Browns, it's tough because they need a quarterback, right? But if they would take Cam Ward at 2, I'd be all about it. I think pretty clear based on what Tennessee has done. They didn't trade for a quarterback. They didn't sign anybody. Anybody noteworthy. The GM comes from the Chiefs. I'm
Yeah,
kind of connecting the dots there. You know what I mean? They spent all this money on the offensive line. They're going to spend all this money and sign Dan Moore and Kevin Zeitler and all these other guys so they could block for Will Levis. Not happening. So I think if you're the Browns, you got to look at it in the sense of, I think there's two, maybe the term generational gets thrown around a little too much, but I think there's two borderline generational players in the draft. One is Abdul Carter, edge rusher, linebacker from Penn State, and the other is cornerback, wide receiver Travis Hunter from Colorado. And I think if you're the Browns, you've got to take one of those two guys and figure out, okay, how do we want to play them? You could put Carter opposite of Myles Garrett. You got two elite pass rushers on defense. That can hide a lot of sins. I think for Hunter, I think teams need to figure out what he wants to play. He says he's going to play both ways. NFL is so hard. It's so hard. It's it sounds great, but I see him primarily as a corner. Maybe you put him on offense, 15 plays a game. But
yeah,
if you're the Browns, you've already got a couple of pretty good corners, but you don't really have an explosive wide receiver. You probably play him at receiver. That's what I would like them to do. And then you say, okay, what quarterback is going to be there at 33? Or, maybe Shadur Sanders, Jackson Dart, one of these guys is still there at pick 25. Maybe we trade up so we can get that 5th-year option. That's what they should do. I mean, they need a quarterback, but I'm not an anti-Shadur Sanders guy. I would not take him in the top 20.
Well, that's your personal like idea about the Browns. I mean, I agree with you. One person cannot make the team. You need to have really good teammates so you can make a team. Even with the Chiefs, just quarterback is not gonna lead the team. You need to have everybody good with you so you can win. And they did lose this this year because only one person or two people were working the team and they didn't manage to continue their streak, which is really awful. But we didn't see a good game this year. That's what happened too. So thank you for sharing that about the Brown and your opinion. I appreciate it. So if you could change one rule
Yeah.
in
But
the NFL,
I think the Chiefs, though. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
yeah. No, go ahead, please. You want to talk about the Chiefs?
No, I was just going to say, okay, I think I was able to log in to the chat now. So there we go.
Oh, that's nice. Yeah.
I think Patrick Mahomes, obviously an amazing quarterback. The results of the Super Bowl doesn't diminish his greatness. We're so lucky that we've gotten to watch him and Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson and Joe Burrow and some of these other guys. But
yeah,
I think okay, he got put with Andy Reid. He had Travis Kelce. They had a good line. They had Tyreek Hill. How would Mahomes' career look if he would have went to the Bears at 2 instead of Mitch Trubisky? We'll never know.
Yeah, I agree. If a quarterback go to another team, maybe they're not gonna be working as good as with that team and different stuff per se. Oh, they share. So the link is shared right now for the book, Kyle, which is really nice. So Doug Worth
there
is
we go. Okay, good.
Yeah. Doug Worth is asking, any thoughts on the possibility of the Browns trading for Kirk Cousin?
Yeah, so we've heard some rumblings. I think here's kind of the roadblock to the Cousins deal is that Atlanta signed him thinking okay, we're going to contend. We've got all these skill players. We've got Bijan Robinson, we've got Drake London, we've got Kyle Pitts. So I think their thought was, we've been in quarterback purgatory since Matt Ryan. They were farting around with Desmond Ridder. And I think they realized, like, we got to get off this bus. Like, we need to bring a guy in the building. They signed Kirk Cousins.
Yeah.
I think everybody loved that. And here was the problem. Kirk Cousins showed up at OTAs before the NFL draft, and Raheem Morris and all these other coaches were like, this is not Kirk Cousins, because he was coming off Achilles, and he was not the same guy. And I think during the process, they kind of fell in love with Michael Penix, and that's what led them to draft him. The problem is Atlanta's GM is kind of embattled, right? Like, he's been the GM for 4 years now. They haven't been to the playoffs. He kind of inherited a mess, so I'll give him a break on that. But he can't just give Kirk Cousins away for free, because Arthur Blanks had to pay all this money. So they're not just going to give a capable starting quarterback away for free. I think they want to get at least some kind of draft compensation, like a third or a fourth round pick, so he can at least go back to Arthur Blank and be like, okay, well, this wasn't a complete loss. Like, we're building around Michael Penix. The Browns make the most sense because Kevin Stefanski obviously has that connection with Kirk Cousins from when they were in Minnesota together. And Stefanski kind of wants a quarterback that's going to play on time, kind of follow the script, good at play action. So they fit perfectly. I mean, I would love that for the Browns. And then maybe you draft a quarterback on day 2 to kind of sit behind Cousins and kind of see what you have. I would say it's a possibility, and I do think Atlanta wants to trade him. But like I said, I think it all comes back to perception. Like, they're just not going to give him away for free or cut him, because it kind of just makes the GM look bad, and he's already on the hot seat. So that's kind of how I see it.
So first of all, I'm going to say thank you so much for your service. And my next question is going to be, how did your time in the Marine Corps shape who you are today?
Whew. That was tough. It's so funny because I actually met up with my buddy, Dave. He was actually retired Sergeant Major from the Marine Corps. He was in for 22 years. And he went in like right after we graduated high school. I waited like a year, but then obviously I got out after an enlistment. He stayed in for 22 years. He was one of the reasons I joined. I went to college for a year, and I was like kind of not sure what I wanted to do. And, it was after 9/11. So like we were all kind of feeling patriotic at that time. And I actually was thinking about joining the Navy. And my dad wanted me to join the Navy because he didn't want me to be in like harm's way. And he's like, no, you can't join the Marine Corps. I won't sleep. I'll be worried about you. And, and then I was looking at joining. And again, I'm not knocking any of the other services, but my buddy Dave found out I was going to go in the Navy, and then he never let me hear the end of it. He's like, oh, you got to go in the Marines. And so I would say like the Marine Corps just throws so much at you that you kind of just learn how to adapt and like take life as it comes. Like, you try not to get rattled. You try to just take life one day at a time. You never know what tomorrow brings, but like whatever comes my way, I'm going to adapt and be as best I can. I would say just, overcoming challenges. I would say was probably the most overcoming challenges and becoming a creative problem solver. Like figuring out how to solve problems.
Agreed. So what do people often misunderstand about military service?
I would say PTSD is a real thing. And, unfortunately, my family, mental health, something we've dealt with like an immediate member of my family, unfortunately. And I would say PTSD is a real thing. It's not real for every person, but for certain veterans out there, they've been exposed to certain things, or they've seen certain things. And, my kind of motto is like, always be kind. Like, you never know what kind of day someone's having. You never know what someone's going through. Can't read other people's thoughts. Like, someone doesn't say hi to you on the street, or, whatever. You never know what someone's going through. And I would say for a lot of veterans, and I would say as men, right? Like, we're supposed to be strong, and, we can't talk about our feelings, and let it brush off your shoulder. You'll be fine. Not how it works. Like, when you go through something in your life that's traumatic, and no matter what it is, whether it's war, whether it's a divorce, whether it's a loss of a loved one, whether it's bullying, whatever it is, you have to deal with it, no matter what
Yeah.
it is. If you don't deal with it, it just festers and it just becomes more of a problem down the road. And I think a lot of veterans, saw some shit, especially, early mid 2000s, Iraq war, Afghanistan and stuff. And it's hard for them to talk about. And I think a lot of veterans sometimes have a hard time like fitting back into society because like you'll never be as close to like people in your regular life outside of family than you will be with like the brothers and sisters that you served with, especially
Yeah.
overseas. Like you have such a bond together that like you could not talk to them for 5 years, but then you meet up with them for coffee or something. And it's like you never left, right? And I think a lot of veterans have mental problems, and it's not a reflection of them. It doesn't mean that they're weak. It's just you were exposed to something that was traumatic, and no one ever taught you or told you how to deal with it, and you've never dealt with it in your life, and it's created some psychological or issues for you, and it's not even a military problem. I think it's a problem in American society in general that we're
Talk too
not
much.
comfortable having the conversation about mental health. Like,
Yeah.
I don't want to wallow in my sorrows, but sometimes it's okay to not be okay.
I agree. That's really the truth. And I do feel you because I'm a child of war as well. And my country went through war and I've seen everything. I've felt everything and I was through it all. So I do believe in PTSD as well. And the stuff that war, it have a toll on you. It doesn't matter if you're a soldier or any like other human being. It's just it can have a toll on you. And I'm happy that you're talking about mental health because it's really important to speak up. It's really important to say that it's okay to not be okay. Thank you for sharing that, Kyle. I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
So let's go with the fun and hypothetical questions right now after all of this. So, what a
Okay.
skill you wish you had, but you don't have?
Maybe to be like a Michelin rated chef.
Yeah.
I love watching cooking shows. Like I'm not like jealous of most people or envious of most people, but like sometimes I think like if there's one person that I wouldn't mind like trading places with, it would probably be like Guy Fieri. Like I feel like
Yeah.
Guy Fieri like literally lives like the greatest life. Like he just gets to go around to all these restaurants and talk to people and like try amazing food and go on cruises and cook for people and watch football. And he's actually a huge Raiders fan, by the way. Huge.
Rick wishes he wished to play the piano. It's amazing.
Okay.
I love that. So, if you weren't in a business or media, what would you be doing, Kyle?
Ooh. If I wasn't in business or media, what would I be doing?
Yes.
I mean, when I was a kid, I was like convinced I was going to be a professional baseball player.
Nice.
Um, I don't know. I feel like I've done what I wanted to do. I feel like I didn't. I feel like I didn't do what I wanted to do for a decent chunk of my life. I just chased dollars instead of do what I want to do. And now I feel like I'm actually doing what I want to do. So
Yeah.
it's hard to think about that.
Agreed.
Like
It's,
it's hard to think about that like something else. You know what I mean?
yeah, yeah, I agree. So, what's one thing you never get tired of talking about?
Probably food, football. Um, yeah, probably those two things. I was gonna say AI, but sometimes AI can be a little redundant.
What's a piece of advice you would give your younger self?
Um, buy Tom Brady rookie cards. No, I would say en- enjoy the journey. Don't focus on the destination. Enjoy the journey. I think sometimes in
Nice.
life, like we set goals for ourselves,
Yeah.
or we don't
Nice.
take enough pride or think about, you know, valuing the journey, like thinking about like enjoying the
I agree.
people and the play in the people, or I'm sorry, the people, places, everything around you. Like, I think like when I was a kid, I wanted to grow up so fast, and
Yes.
sometimes I think like, man, I would give anything to go. I would give anything to be a teenager and like go back and like have dinner with my grandparents at Bob Evans again, and just
I
talk to
agree.
them,
I
because my
agree.
grandma passed a couple of years ago, and just
I'm
talk to
so
her
sorry.
about her life and everything. So that's, yeah, I would say like enjoy the journey. Like don't focus so much on the destination. There's going to be ups, there's going to be downs. You're going to have bad days, good days, but just try to enjoy like every moment, because sometimes it goes quicker than you want it to.
Agreed. If you had one message to share with the world, what would it be?
Yeah, I would probably go back to what I said in the beginning, was like either d- do what you're good at or do what you love, because I think you'll find happiness in one of those two things, whatever it is.
Yeah.
I think sometimes people do, don't do one of those two things.
So I don't want to finish the episode, honestly. It's 1 hour already. And I'm so happy that you had the chance to come to this episode, Kyle. Do you have anything else you want to share with everybody?
No,
Oh,
somebody ramping back up with NFL draft content, plenty of dynasty stuff, following the draft. Um, no, I just appreciate like the fantasy football community has been like a huge supporter of me, publishing my book and doing stuff, even though it
yes.
wasn't necessarily fantasy created. Like I just reached out to, people like, I actually reached out to Doug and I said, "Hey Doug, just wanted to share with you what I'm working on. The book's going to be free on Amazon for the next 5 days. Here's a link. If you think anyone would benefit from this, please share. If not, no pressure, and then so that was cool. And then I think that was when
He
Doug
didn't
talked to
tell me
you.
it was
And
free.
well, no, not the paperback wasn't free, because
I
unfortunately
know.
I can't, there's printing costs, but I'm saying at least
Of
the ebook
course.
version was free. And
Yes.
so the fantasy community was so supportive of me, and that was like, I think like we actually sold like over 200 copies within the first week, which was like awesome.
Round of
So that was like really,
applause.
really cool. Now we just gotta hope we get some reviews. But um no, I mean that was like really cool. And I think, for anyone wondering why I did that book, in a perfect world, I'd love to do football, 24/7.
Yes.
Unfortunately, I haven't reached a spot in the fantasy industry that I can do it full time, and it's enough money for me to support my family. I wish it was. Fortunately, it's not.
It's
So
not
I want to do as much football as content as I can, but at the end of the day, like my kids come first, and I've got to
great.
focus on my business, to put food on the table. But I'm trying to juggle as much as I possibly can.
That's awesome. I
So
love that.
don't think for a second I've lost my enthusiasm for football just because I'm doing something else. It's just I've got kids to feed.
Family comes first. Definitely. So, Kyle, even though that Mel is trying to remind me, but I will never forget. I do have, I do always have one more question before I end the show. And my question is, can you share
Okay.
something that you never shared before? Maybe a secret or something that you never spoke of, maybe of your earlier years, and you would like to share it at the Game Changers
One
tonight.
time one time 12-year-old me stole a golf tool from Walmart that was $6.99. I I had it in the package. I took the package to the bathroom. I took the tool out of the package, put it in my pocket, threw the package away, and I stole a $6.99 golf tool from Walmart. I'm sorry.
Oh my
It
God,
had
you
like
would
a
never
ball
forget.
marker.
price.
it literally had like 7 different things it did, like on the golf course. And I never told anyone that
Oh
I
my
stole from
God.
Walmart.
That's crazy. You told everybody tonight, Kyle. You told everybody tonight. Thank you for sharing that story. Kyle, I really don't want to finish this episode. I had so much fun with you. But before we conclude, can you please share how our audience can connect with you on social media? And
Yeah,
when they go to your page, how they can buy the book and stuff like that as
yeah.
well.
So I've got the book pinned on my Twitter/X profile, but
Yes.
my Twitter is luck is made FF. I've got the book there that you can click on the Amazon link and buy it if you want. You could do Kindle, paperback. The hardback's a little expensive because the printing costs are more expensive for hardbacks. So I wouldn't recommend that. But yeah, if you want to do the Kindle and support me or buy the paperback, I really do think, if you're someone that's interested in AI and how do I apply it to my life, if you don't want all the technical jargon, if you don't want it to be like a boring classroom lecture or a PowerPoint presentation, I feel like I tried to make it as like engaging as I possibly could and break it down in a way that like anyone could kind of make sense of, like
Yes.
try to be a good communicator. So yeah, that's where you can find me. And like I said, I'm should be back doing fantasy content again in the fall full time. But yeah, I'm just kind of focusing on the draft right now.
That's good. So, thank you for joining us for this episode of the Game Changers. I hope my discussion with Kyle provided valuable insights into his experiences in fantasy football and life itself. So, Kyle, you were talking about the Bills. Listen, who I'm going to have next week. Join me for the next episode on
Oh,
Wednesday, April 9th, featuring Sal Capaccio as my special guest. I
nice.
would like to
All
acknowledge,
right.
yeah, I'm so excited to talk to Sal. I reach out to him on his business email, and he reached out, and he was so happy to be on the show next week. So
Nice.
I'm really honored.
All right.
I would like to
Yeah, thanks
acknowledge
for
JC.
having me. I appreciate it.
Of course.
If any of
Thank
you
you for
any of you
coming.
are at the any of you are at the Fantasy Football Expo in April, I plan on being there. I'm actually a local. I'm in Cleveland, so I'm only like an hour from Canton, so I'll
Really,
definitely will show up. Yeah.
that's cool. I cannot wait to see you and say hi. Definitely, Kyle. So I would like to acknowledge JC for his contributions behind the scenes and the entire TSA team. Please subscribe to our podcast and leave a review. Your feedback is important for our improvement. Follow us on social media for updates on upcoming episodes and be part of the Sports Affiliation community where everyone is welcome. Until next time, keep challenging the game and making your mark. This is Carla and Kyle signing off. Wishing you all a pleasant evening. Have a good night, everybody.